Hi everyone, and welcome back to Showverse. I'm Haley, and I'll be talking about the Arrowverse. Today we're jumping into Flash Season 1. Let's go ahead and get started. So we start off, we have met Barry in the mid-season of Arrow Season 2. We actually saw him get struck by his lightning that creates the Flash. We revisit it right here at the start of the episode, and it is like, it's the scene. This is when Barry Allen becomes the Flash. He's working in his lab, fixing up some stuff, bummed that he didn't make it to actually see the particle accelerator, like, in person, when he hears on the news that something went wrong, and he sees a lightning storm. It starts raining, he starts trying to fix something, and lightning out. He is then in a coma for 9 months. Barry wakes up, and, like, the first thing we see is him, like, jump out of bed, and there's a camera on him, and for some reason it's, like, focused right where if he stands up, it's on his abs. And he goes, "What the? Lightning gave me abs?" I'm like, this is a beautiful way of describing why this nerdy character that, like, sits in his lab all day is in peak physical form. It's just, you know, his muscles just work overtime now because that's just how the Flash is. I love it. Great, yada yada, to get the character to look how we need him to look. But he wakes up not in a hospital like you'd expect him to be. He's in Star Labs, the place where the particle accelerator went off, because his, you know, dream scientist, the one he's like looks up to, he wants to get his autograph and stuff, decided to take him in and help him through this coma because apparently the doctors weren't sure what was going on. I do want to apologize if you hear any little noises. My cat's bowl is right there because she won't eat unless I'm nearby, and she's eating right now. But eventually he starts noticing that he can start moving a bit faster than everybody else. Pretty sure he, like, the first thing he does is, like, run to catch something, and he's way too fast. And he learns that the particle accelerator did something to him, and now he has powers of super speed. We also learn he's not the only one. There's a man named Clyde Martin, who everyone thought died on the night of the accelerator because his plane went down with him and his brother in it. And he's not dead. He now is robbing banks with his ability to make little storms all around him. And Barry convinces everyone that, like, he should be helping catch these, what they eventually call metahumans. Because, you know, Star Labs are responsible for this, and he has the ability to help, so they should help him help the city by, like, taking care of these metahumans, because the cops can't handle this. And while talking to people in Star Labs, Caitlin mentions that her fiance died on the night of the accelerator. And I do want to note that, like, something in this show is that people will tell their tragic backstories, TM, with almost no prompting. They'll just bring it up, which I think is very funny, because it, like, steams past, like, some of the awkward, like, oh, I don't know why, or, like, how it would eventually happen, like, maybe 2 or 3 episodes later for a lot of shows. They're just like, no. We're just going to get out of the way. They're just going to start relating to people, which initially I did think was weird, and then I remembered, like, all of those TV shows where somebody comes to, like, help somebody out, and they unprompted come out with their thing. Now, that is on television, so it's still not completely real, but I've also witnessed that shit happen in real life, so these are just really tragic backstories that I'm, like, not expecting people to just blurt out, like, your fiance dying right in front of you, basically. Especially since we later learned they were literally talking to each other on walkie-talkies when he died. When Barry gets home, Iris, the girl he's been pining over since he was, like, 10, is there, and we find out that Iris's dad, Joe, who is a cop, brought Barry in after Barry's father was accused of murdering his mother when he was 11. Barry believes that his dad did not do it, and he needs to prove that there was a lightning storm that happened in the house that night, like red and yellow lightning, and that somebody else did this. Obviously not his dad. His dad would not have killed his mom. But the little 11-year-old, nobody believed him. He got put into the care of Joe, which I can't... Maybe we find this out a little later, but I don't remember them specifically saying, like, why Joe took him in. Joe mentions in the flashback, like, their kid is friends with my kid, but how does that lead to you adopting this child? I don't know. Maybe he just decided to step in and adopt. But the girl that Barry likes, that he then grew up with, Iris West, we pretty quickly find out she's dating her father's brand new partner. They literally just started working together right before the particle accelerator blew, and they've been dating for a couple of months after he helped her recover a stolen backpack that somebody had taken from her. Eddie Thawne. It's an important name. He's an important man. And Barry's trying to adjust to his new life, and he just can't help but get in Clyde Martin's face. He's literally just like walking, and Clyde Martin happens to come by, and he tries fighting him pretty much immediately. He has no fighting experience, but he's going to do it anyway. And when he's trying to convince people that they should be helping with the metahumans, they don't want to. So he goes to Starling City, which I found out is 600 miles away from Central City. I thought they were both farther and closer at the same time with how often these characters run back and forth. It's a little strange. It's 600 miles. That's pretty far. I've driven 600 miles in one day. It takes forever. But either way, he goes to visit the Arrow. He's like, yo, I've got these powers now. Like, what am I supposed to do? I feel like I should be helping the city because Barry's always wanted to help people. And Arrow's like, you know what? You freaking should. And take your own advice. Wear a mask. And then they have that cute little scene where Arrow, like, shoots off and flies away. And Barry goes, cool. And then you see Arrow still on the building. He goes, cool. When Barry runs off. It's neat. I like it. He's like, my cat. And Barry starts, like, trying to convince Cisco, the other person that works at Star Labs. I'm getting ahead of myself. At Star Labs, there are 3 people left. Dr. Wells, which is the person that Barry looks up to. Caitlin, the one who spouted her backstory very quickly. And Cisco, the, like, geeky nerd mechanical engineer, which they definitely lean into his nerdiness several times throughout the show. But he's like, come on, Cisco. We could be, like, heroes and stuff. This would be awesome. And Cisco's like, don't even worry, man. I have this suit that I was trying to make for firefighters so it can handle the heat of, like, how fast your friction would be running this fast. I just love that by the end of episode 1, Barry has a team, he has a suit, and his father figure, Joe, knows about it, knows his secret. He just starts off. He's off to the races, ready to go. He's got all this stuff figured out. He's like a whole season ahead of most other superheroes. You know, he's got to go fast. They do end up stopping Clyde Martin because Barry just runs in the opposite direction of a tornado that Clyde's trying to make, which is a wonderful thing. And we also end the first episode. I didn't think this started until, like, middle of the season. The first time I watched this, like, I didn't remember how early it started. But end of the first episode, we know that Wells is actually a tricksy little bitch because he's been in a wheelchair the whole time. And at the end of the episode, he goes into this secret room, puts his hand on the wall opens up, he goes in there. As soon as the door closes, he gets up out of his wheelchair, goes up to a wall, and he's like, Gideon, show me the future. And a newspaper shows up from April 24th, 2024, No, April 20th, 2024. Sorry about that. And it says Flash disappears in crisis. Who is this man? Is he actually Dr. Wells? Is he somebody different? Why is he pretending to be in a wheelchair? These are all questions that we are immediately left with at the end of episode 1. Like, just immediate. Done. And which I do find interesting. Again, this show is like a season ahead of everyone. They're just zooming along, which makes sense. It's the Flash. But it still throws me off a little bit. Speaking of Cisco and Barry, they kind of don't want to leave it at just stopping metahumans. They start just stopping any, crimes that are happening. Barry starts helping out, stopping people from running away, grabbing purses from people. And Caitlin, not really happy about that. She's like, we just agreed to stop metahumans, and that's it. We are not some crime-fighting group. We are just to stop the metahumans that the police can't handle. And while Barry is out trying to catch metahumans, he starts passing out. And Wells, Caitlin, and Cisco start some tests to see why he's passing out. They have him run, and Wells immediately points out to Caitlin, look at his glucose levels. And he needs way more food because he's just burning through it, which, I mean, that makes sense. You're moving really fast. You have a higher metabolism. You just need, way too much food. So the rest of the episode, there's boxes of empty food, like belly burger bags, donut boxes, bunch of drinks and stuff surrounding Barry for the rest of the episode, as he's just constantly eating. The plates at Jitters, the coffee shop that Iris works at, they also make their regular coffee shop. He just has plates of so many dishes in front of him. Now, Joe points out that the Iron Heights prison cannot handle metahumans. They are not prepared to take these people that, are so much different than the regular population. And so they start putting them in the tubes of the particle accelerator. There's these little rooms in there for some reason already. I know they kind of explain it, but I don't know what they're for. And so they can just pull them forward, open them up, pop a person in there, go away. And I have several questions on how this little prison works, because these guys are in there for months eventually. Who's feeding them? Is it Cisco and Caitlin? How are they getting the food in there if it's too dangerous to even open it? Is there a shower in the lab that they allow them out to use? Are they washing their clothes? What about bathroom time? It's literally a space as big as my desk right here that they just kind of pop them in and then we never see them again. How is this prison being run? Also, so the police are just supposed to leave all these cases open because they can't arrest anyone because they're in a particle accelerator room. The police are just supposed to be fine with that, a bunch of open cases all the time. I know some police stations have a ton of open cases all the time anyway, but these are weird ones. These are usually pretty threatening to the public ones, and then they just disappear one day. They've just got to be fine with that. You'd expect a task force or something eventually, because that's real weird. It's real weird. I know the first few, they die, so they could probably just oh look, there's the body. We could just prove that this person did it. But they eventually start catching them. What is the systems? What's happening? I don't trust any of this. I don't know, if some of them, especially eventually they catch a metahuman that can teleport and stuff, and so they have to put her in a special tube box that has a one-way mirror. How does she get out, use the bathroom, get food, shower? Because you're not just leaving them in there. What's going on? Little rant over. There is a cute little story that Barry's dad, who's he visits in Iron Heights, tells him about how when Barry first got on his little feet, he ran first. He did not walk. He just ran immediately, which I think is great. Just fits perfectly into what he is. I don't know. I thought it was cute. Now we meet Leonard Snart. Eventually a very, very important character that goes on to do so much. And we first meet him trying to steal the biggest diamond. And he is able to get his hands on a cold gun that Cisco had originally made to stop Barry if they ever needed it. He made 2 guns. He made a heat gun and a cold gun. There's a guy who at some point broke into Star Labs, snatched them, and was now selling them to Snart. And Snart just like, psh, fucking kills him. Now he's got the guns for free. Yay! And he starts using it. And like, it takes things to absolute zero. It just destroys anything it comes in contact with. Felicity comes to visit because she hasn't been to visit Barry yet since he woke up from his coma. And it's real cute. I like seeing Felicity. She makes me happy. Also, Barry gets very pissy about the cold gun. Like, you'd think, I know he knows himself, but these guys never met you before you, like, woke up from your coma, because technically, like, you were laying in their office, but, like, they didn't know you. So, of course, they made safeguards. But no, he gets pissy about the cold gun, and he turns off his communicator ear thingy in the middle of danger. He almost gets himself fucking seriously hurt. God damn it, Barry. Damn it. While Barry is going out with friends to celebrate something, maybe just to have a good time, introduce Iris and Eddie to Cisco and Caitlin in like a nice equal footing kind of space. Without them being like directly his doctors, but being his friends. They go to a bar, and Barry very quickly discovers he cannot get drunk. The alcohol just doesn't really affect him because his metabolism is just burning it off immediately. Everyone's very sad about this, and I do find it kind of funny because like it would make sense for it to be a side effect of him, burning things very quickly, including food. But like, he's like, shot, nothing. While at the bar, both Eddie, because he's a cop, and, I guess Barry, he doesn't get a call, but like he heads off. Eddie gets a call about a bombing that has happened at a big building, and that they need help, because there's a fire and stuff. And they immediately run off, and we discover Barry, if he runs fast enough, can go right up buildings. And again, they're really kind of speeding through these like discoveries of his powers and everything. He levels up pretty quick. And he is spotted by somebody, and he decides to just moving his face back and forth super fast, so it like blurs his face, so you can't really see. And eventually he figures out how to like move his vocal cords in a way that like makes him sound distorted, so you can't really hear what his actual voice is, which is very helpful. We also meet General Eiling, just a sweet, innocent general up to just only good things. There's a lot of sarcasm there, and I really hope you caught it. He's there to actually track down the metahuman that created the bomb. Apparently anything she touches turns into a bomb. It's like Midas, but somehow even worse. Barry's able to actually talk to this girl and like get her to come with him to Star Labs, where they run some tests on her, and they try to figure out, what's going on. And it turns out the bomb shrapnel that's inside of her body has been fused in there, and that's what's, sparked that particular kind of change when the particle accelerator went off. And Wells, being mad about General Eiling being in town and possibly discovering Barry's stuff and like trying to take him with him, just kind of sets her towards Eiling like an attack dog. Like he's like, you have one final mission because you're a soldier. You're going to go in there and you're going to kill him. And it's fucked up. It's very weird. Wells is weird. He's a very weird character. Not a fan. All my homies hate Dr. Wells. But General Eiling ends up killing the bomb girl before she can kill him. And her whole body is about to explode. So instead of like a bomb like this big, it's like, a person. And so they figure out how fast Barry needs to run on water to get her out into the ocean enough that she doesn't destroy the city, and how fast he needs to go to get out of the blast range before he dies, which is 650 miles per hour. It's very fast. He ends up going that. That's the fastest he's ever gone. Also, Barry is very worried about Iris because she is taking a journalism class, and she's decided as what part of her project thing, she's going to start making a blog about the Flash that she's kind of become a little bit obsessed with. From her own words, she wants to like prove that the impossible exists because her best friend Barry has always believed in the impossible, and if one impossible thing can exist, maybe more things like his dad not being guilty for killing his mom kind of stuff. But they're all very worried that she might get targeted by bad metahumans that are trying to get to Barry because she kind of puts a lot of things up, and so they might, think she knows something, which does kind of happen eventually. We also see one of our first hints of Grodd. There is a gorilla cage that's seen in Star Labs that's like the door's still broken off. And then there's a flashback about when General Eiling and Wells stopped being, like, partners on a project, and it shows Grodd in his cage. You could see Wells going up to talk to the monkey, to the gorilla. And, yeah, a little foreshadowing for Grodd. Speaking of, that kind of happening with Iris, with somebody showing up thinking she knows a little bit more possibly about the Flash than she does, we get to the next metahuman, which is actually Barry's bully from like middle school. And this bully actually goes to Iris to like flirt with her and stuff, and to eventually ask like, you're not going to write about the Flash anymore, you're going to write about me and about how awesome I am, because that's how that works. And they're like, he turns into metal like whenever he wants, especially on contact. So they're like trying to figure out how fast Barry needs to go to actually knock him out. And they're like, 837 miles per hour, or about Mach 1.1 should do it. Any less than that and you'll destroy your fist. Cool. Barry is able to go that fast. So even though it's, literally, like, the last episode, the fastest he could go was 650. This one, he's able to go 837. That's a big jump, but he does it. He ends up, he has to run, halfway across the city and then go full speed at him, but he does do it. And, they're able to put the bully in, their little prison that I've already ranted about. During this episode, Joe starts asking around about Nora's murder, which Nora is, Barry's mom. He starts asking because the Flash, when he runs, he has yellow lightning behind him. And he remembers Barry saying that the house was filled with red and yellow lightning. So he's wondering if maybe another person, metahuman like Barry, could have possibly been there that night. And if so, was there a particle accelerator 14 years ago. So he starts wondering if maybe Wells had something to do with it. And he starts invites Wells for a drink. And he's like slowly prodding at trying to get the answer and like where Wells was that night. And they learn that Wells had like moved to Central City just a couple months after the murder. That he was over in Starling City before that. And he's like, well, why did you leave Starling City and stuff? And he eventually kind of mentions Tess, which is his wife or fiance at the time. I honestly can't remember. That she had died right before he moved to Central City. So Joe feels a little bad about asking about it, but Joe at the time kind of decides, maybe he didn't have anything to do with it, especially since Wells explains that his particle accelerator that made Barry is for sure the first one, and it was going to like push science, years forward, and instead it broke. But after he starts asking around about these things, a man in a yellow suit, kind of similar to Barry's, shows up. He's also got red lightning when he runs, and he collects all the evidence that Joe has on Nora's murder and sticks a knife into a picture of Iris on the wall, and it says, "Stop or else." So he's a little frightened about that, and I would be too. That's fucking crazy. One, the dude got in your house, no problem. You're a cop. I'm sure there's fucking locks up and down that goddamn door. Threaten your daughter. Stole everything. You don't know how powerful this person is. It's a scary time. So he, backs off the questions that he was asking pretty quickly after that. Now, this is a pretty big episode. It starts with Wells in his little secret room talking to Gideon, asking to see if the future is the same, and making a journal entry about how Barry is progressing, about how everything's going to plan. He's getting faster and faster every day. And then Barry fights this man who can sap electricity. And he saps Barry's power. And he actually kind of overloads a little bit and really freaks out and heads off. But Barry can't run anymore. Just very not good. Because after he figures this out, he leaves the station. And Tachman from the Arrow, the one who is obsessed with clocks and such, is being brought in. Pretty quickly. Holds the police station hostage with a collection of cops, and Iris is there because of course she happened to be visiting at the time. And Iris is so certain that the Flash is going to show up at any second and get rid of them, get them out of there. And while waiting for that to happen, Eddie makes a move because Tachman didn't actually see him in the building. He'd kind of hidden, and he tries to shoot Tachman, but he's been wearing a bulletproof vest this whole time. He turns around and shoots Eddie, and they eventually convince him to at least put do something for him. And Tachman puts a splint and writes out the time he put the splint on the forehead, which is what you are supposed to do when you put any kind of thing that stops blood flow, which is the whole point of is it a splint? I don't think it's called a splint, but I think you know what I'm talking about. The thing. Well, whenever they put that, you're supposed to write the time on the forehead so that the people in the ambulance are able to know exactly when that was put on, because you have to take it off after a certain amount of time. Usually an ambulance is able to get there before that time goes up, which is why you write it on the forehead. He wrote it in Eddie's blood. He just kind of dipped his fingy in there, typed it all out. Down to the second at least, because he's obsessed with clocks. So... all this is happening while Barry is trying to get his speed back, and the lightning guy shows up at Star Labs because he has a bone to pick with Wells, and they're fighting The whole time they're like trapped inside Star Labs, running around trying to like stay out of this dude's path. And Wells releases Barry's nemesis bully who can turn to metal and is like, you kill this dude who saps electricity, you get your freedom. Just, again, similar to the Bomb Girl, just set somebody on somebody else like a gosh darn attack dog, and they die both times. This isn't a good plan, Wells. You've now tried it twice. I think that's enough science experimentation. You can put it down as a failure of a plan. Eventually, the dude with electricity has them all in one room, and then he's like, Cisco, Caitlin, and Barry is over here, and Wells is kind of farther away because they're trying to get him into a van so they can all escape. And this dude's coming right at Wells, and you can see Wells just about to get out of his chair so he could run and save his own gosh darn life. When that's the moment Barry is able to get his lightning back, not because the electricity guy actually stole the power, not because the electricity guy stole his power, but because there was a bit of that and a bit of a mental block for Barry. So he was able to push back that mental block at that moment to save Wells and to take this dude out. At that moment, Eddie and Iris are saying goodbye because they've decided that Talkman is like, I'm just gonna go ahead and take one person, and they're gonna die if I don't get my demands soon. And he like is heading off to go, I think, to the roof for a helicopter pickup, and they are able to express, because he again spouts his tragic backstory, and he's like, I never got to say goodbye to my sister because I was in prison and all that stuff. So Joe is like, you the person dying on the floor? That's her boyfriend. Can you at least let them say goodbye? If you're gonna like, he's gonna die, or she's gonna die, or both of them are gonna die, can they at least say goodbye? And when Iris is saying goodbye, Eddie whispers in her ear that he has an ankle holster on. There's a gun down there. She takes it, and she's able to shoot Clockman in the, I think, shoulder, in order to subdue him enough to capture him, and they're able to handle the hostage situation without the Flash, which is good, but it does kind of waver Iris's, faith in the Flash a little bit. She ends up talking to him because she can kind of get his attention by putting like notices up on her blog. Because again, Barry knows about it. She doesn't know it's Barry, obviously, though, so she just pops something up there. And she's like, you didn't come. And he's like, I'm sorry, there was something else happening. Not that it was more important than you, it was just more, right there. And yeah, her feelings on him waver just a little bit. The next episode is a crossover episode, which if you haven't heard from some of the other Showverse episodes that I posted, I'm actually doing the crossover episodes as their own Showverse. So after we cover Arrow, I will be covering this crossover episode and then Constantine, and then I will be back to Flash and Arrow again after that. But I'll be talking about episode 8 of The Flash on a completely separate time. So please come back. I believe it'll be the first week of next month. You'll be able to come back and see then. I will still be referencing a few things that happen, like if they come back up, but I will just be like, that was in the crossover episode, and you'll be able to watch that later. We start with Barry chasing the man in yellow. We don't know why, because it immediately is put back a day. So I guess we'll find out very soon. We start with, this is Christmas time, and Barry has gotten Iris a replica of her mother's wedding band that she used to wear around her neck, and she lost on a 5th grade field trip. This kind of gets Eddie a little weirded out, because he notices that they're really close and stuff, but a wedding ring? I know it's her mom's and stuff, but is there something more there? I think Barry likes you kind of stuff. She got Barry a really cool little microscope too, because they just know each other. It is very cute. They're very cute. It does weird me out. I don't know. It weirds me a little bit because they did grow up like siblings from 11 onwards, which is a lot of very formative years in a child's life. So even though Barry has had like a crush on Iris that whole time, it's kind of like they're living in the same house, and Iris views him as a brother completely. She's always saying it throughout the first half of the season, like, you're like a brother. So I don't know. I know, their end game and stuff, but like it's weird to me. I always get weirded out by sibling relationships. I had the same problem with the relationship in the Umbrella Academy. Like, I know they're not blood related, but like, you were raised as siblings. It's weird. It's very weird. But we also get a little bit of drama with Caitlin. Her fiance, Ronnie, which we remember died the day of the particle accelerator. Found out he didn't at the very, very, very end of that crossover episode. So it will be talked about a little bit more there. But he kind of starts showing up, including showing up behind Caitlin when she's about to get in her car. So his like reflection is on the car door, and she like turns around and is like, "What the heck?" And he starts walking away, and she's following him, and then he like bursts into flames. His freaking head and hands just flames, and she's like, runs around the corner, is like, and then we just kind of cut. So I assume she just eventually walks back to her car and leaves. Or maybe she checks back and I guess he's gone. I don't know, because we cut away and we're supposed to figure out how Caitlin got out of that situation. I understand probably for time it made more sense, but I was a little bit like, what? You can't just leave at that, like, what? Whatever. Like, yeah, she's shocked. Very shocked. So even though Eddie's feeling a little weird about Iris and the way Barry might feel about him and stuff, he, because it's Christmas time, he gives her a gift, which is in a box. It kind of looks like a ring box. So you could see Iris is a little bit like, she opens up. It's a key to his apartment because he would like them to move in together. And that's very, very cute. I'm so happy for them. They're very cute. Again, like Barry and Iris are very cute. They're obviously endgame. Eddie and Iris are also very good. Eddie's like, when they very first showed him, this was a thing I had a problem with, and I was going to mention it actually. When they very first show him, he's like, oh, he's so cocky, and he counts and keeps track of arrests and like makes it like a competition. And then he's immediately, he's actually like a real cool guy. And he's a freaking golden retriever puppy every once in a while, the way he lights up when he's talking to people, and he's just having a great time. And I don't know why they did that, because it wasn't even for the full episode that he was like an asshole or anything. Like, I don't know. I don't always understand the point in putting in the effort of these things when you're going to immediately undo that effort before the end of the episode. I don't know. But he's, very sweet, asking Iris to move in. Back to Barry's trauma. The man in yellow shows up to Barry's work. And Barry's like, yo, why'd you kill my mom? It's a fucked up thing to say. And he says, if you want to know, you'll have to catch me. And they start their little race, which I'm pretty sure, it's the same race as at the beginning of the episode. They end up in a football arena where they like race and fight, and eventually the man in yellow just kind of leaves Barry there. No answers, just frustration, just playing with him. Caitlin goes to Cisco and is like, okay, it's going to sound crazy, but I saw Ronnie. He's alive, and he's on fire. Literally. Can you help me? Talk to him. And they go and they're able to find him. I think they're in like a sewer. Or not a sewer, like some kind of maintenance tunnel of some form for some reason. Not really sure how they tracked him there. I mean, Cisco has like a machine on him, I think, but it's still like, what the fuck? Whatever. She warns Cisco right before they see him, like, he's not the same guy he was when you knew him. And they see him, and they're like, Ronnie, it's us, and he goes, I'm not Ronnie. And they're like, what? No, you're Ronnie. And he just says, firestorm, and then he bursts off. Helpful. Well, it is helpful, but like, what the fuck? Barry goes to visit his dad because, he's so frustrated about the man in yellow. He's a little sad about Iris moving in with Eddie. He's, going through a lot, so he wants to go visit his dad. And his dad, who is in prison since both Barry and Iris were 11, knows that Barry is in love with Iris. Eddie caught on to it a little bit. Everybody knows that Barry likes Iris. And his dad is like pushing Barry to like tell Iris, just come on, man, finally tell her that you love her. They find out that the man in yellow is trying to get tachyon particles. And there's one place that has some tachyon particles, and that is Mercury. The gang finds out that the man in yellow is trying to get tachyon particles. There's one place with some tachyon particles, and that is Mercury Labs. They're like, can we use your tachyon particle device as bait? We promise it will be safe. They bring Joe, so like the police are there to back up their claims. They're like, trust us, we'll be safe. We just need it to lure out the man in yellow. They're not a fan of it, but they do agree when Barry's like, I know you thought you were just showing a bunch of cops around the place because there was a break-in. But I actually went to school for science, and I saw a lot of things that I could tell some science magazines about. It'd be on the front page. She's like, all right, fine. You can use my tachyon particles. But I need them back. It's important. So they set up a little thing in Star Labs where they put the tachyon particles at the end of a room. They have this big force field machine in the middle of the room. Not really in the middle, but like right in front of the tachyons. So you don't even really have to go through it. You could go around it. But obviously the quickest way is to go through the machine. And they decide they're going to use force fields because that's something speedsters can't go through. Also, yeah, I'm pretty sure around now they start calling them speedsters. Specifically Barry and the man in yellow. They're speedsters. Metahumans as well, but, They test it out even. When Barry tries to run into it. Not gonna work. Not gonna work. So they put the tachyon particles down there and they kind of set out some kind of thing to like let people know that they're there. Like a signal. That's the word I'm looking for. A signal that it's there. And the man in yellow falls for it and he gets trapped in the force field. So the cops and Dr. Wells head on down to go talk to him. And Joe immediately asks, why did you kill Nora? And instead, the man in yellow looks directly at Wells. And is like, Dr. Wells, we finally meet. And they go on this little rant. He calls himself the reverse of Flash. Very interesting. Choice of words there. The barrier gives for a second. Long enough that he goes in, grabs Wells, and just starts freaking pounding on him. But the police can't get in there. Nobody can get in until they're able to like close it down. And immediately the reverse Flash grabs the tachyon particles and punches a cop. Literally everyone but Joe. And he says, I warned you not to hunt me, to Joe. And then he runs off. And Caitlin sends an SOS to Barry. And he goes to fight the reverse Flash. And he's losing until Firestorm shows up and just is able to beat the reverse Flash. At least, probably with a mix of the two, but, that both Barry and Firestorm were fighting. But definitely gave him a leg up because reverse Flash was not ready for Firestorm. At this point, Joe is telling Eddie about metahumans. That they're something the police can't handle, and that, Joe's been working with people to help him figure that stuff out. Wells goes in his little secret room, and he touches another wall and reveals another secret door within the room, and a mannequin is in there. Pulls out this little ring, puts it up to the mannequin, and a yellow suit. The suit for the man in yellow pops out of the ring and onto the mannequin. And Wells puts the tachyon device on it, and it like moves, like the whole thing just, whoa, it's got it. And because it's the Christmas episode, Wells ends it by going, "Merry Christmas," in the man in yellow's voice while staring at his mannequin. Told you, Wells is a tricksy bitch. Me and my homies, we hate Dr. Wells. I hate him. He's the fucking worst. He's manipulative. I don't know when this happens because I, for some reason, didn't put it in my notes, even though I definitely wanted to talk about it. There are points in the show where Wells talks to Cisco and Caitlin like they're his children, and he's an abusive asshole. Because that is what he is. And like, you know, Barry's his favorite child, and how dare you do anything to hurt or even slightly inconvenience Barry. And he just treats him like, they like stand like a child who's been verbally and like emotionally abused stands. Like they're very still. Their head is down. You can tell they're ready to like defend. They look like they're physically ready to like fight off anything. Like they're stuck between fight and freeze on the fight, flight, or freeze reactions. It's messed up. One, because they're the boss. His boss is they're talking to him like they're children, and not even like good parenting. It's just this abusive stuff, and it's it's not good. So like we already hate Dr. Wells for being real weird like that, and apparently he like ran his whole thing kind of showing favoritism to people, his whole company. So they've just already been conditioned to like, they don't even find it weird at this point. And it's that messes with me. I hate that kind of shit. I hate it. Wells is not a good dude at all. Hate him. Barry's training to get faster because that's what he's always doing. And he's trying to actually take a little bit more time to train, rather than having to do it on the spot, because, you know, training's good. That's the whole point, that like boxers train, wrestlers train, athletes train. You know, you have to you can't just only really do everything on the spot. So he starts training to get faster. But Snart's back. Captain Cold, as Cisco calls him, because Cisco comes up with names for everybody. I haven't been naming them all because, you know, not all of them are important, especially the first few that die immediately. They're not. Captain Cold is back, and he finds a little friend who's obsessed with fire. He gives him that fire gun that I mentioned that he has and didn't use. His little pyromaniac friend and him are going to steal his painting. It's like white and red like this, and it's nonsense underneath. It's like somebody put some nonsense and then they put like white and red over it. It's very, very expensive though. And he's gonna try to steal it, but he's also trying to take down the Flash so that Central City can be his own personal playground. So that Cold can do whatever he wants, steal whatever he needs. And, you know, his friend decides he's ready for it, because they actually do steal the painting, because they weren't expecting the fire guy. They were like ready for Captain Cold. They had made these like riot shields with like heating strips on them, so that when you try to shoot at the police, it would heat it up enough that they wouldn't, you know, die and all go home popsicles. But they were not ready for fire. Makes sense. So they were able to get the painting, and the fire dude's like, to show how much that I'm with you on this. He burns the freaking painting. I still think they could have sold that damn thing. They could have fenced that off, had the money, and tried to stop the Flash. There's no reason they had to freaking destroy that painting. Just, make money. Fuck the bourgeoisie, which is what they got the painting from. At least make some money off them if they want something so dumb. But, it was a beautiful painting. It was fine. Barry and Cisco kind of get the idea that they could cross the streams of the fire and ice gun, like Ghostbusters, and it should cancel each other out because it makes absolute zero and absolute hot. So it should, go down to zero, and it should break the guns. Trying to put all that effort in. At this point, Iris officially moves in with Eddie. And Barry and Joe are having this little conversation with Iris's boxes kind of around them because she has to go to work, and they're like, she ain't cleaning these up, and Barry uses his super speed to basically finish packing for her. And Joe's like, it's gonna be weird with nobody here. And they both kind of look at each other, and Barry's like, it is kind of hard to keep it from my apartment neighbors, all this running around at night. And they're like, we don't have to, you don't have to move back in. And Barry runs home, grabs the suitcase, and comes back. And he's decided to move back in with Joe. It's very cute. Barry goes to fight Snart and Mick. Mick is the fire guy. Sorry. I never actually said his name. And he is finally able to get them to cross the streams after, the police have set boundaries. And they keep kind of, pushing in on him. But those two just want to fight Barry. They don't really care about the police at this moment because they're just trying to get him out of the way. And Barry's able to trick them and get them to do it, and it breaks their guns, and they take them in. But they are broken out before they even make it fully to the prison by Snart's sister. Snart has a sister. I'm pretty sure she's a little sister. She breaks them out. So they're out there somewhere. We open up on Wells coming into his home. He immediately gets up out of his wheelchair because he doesn't fucking need it. He has it to have sympathy or something. We find out later. He gets home and somebody attacks him. He grabs a gun when he hears somebody around, and glass ceiling that he has kind of breaks through. The police are called. I believe it's his neighbors that actually call the police. And he's wandering around in his wheelchair now in his home. And heck, Caitlin and Cisco couldn't even find his house because they've literally never been there. It's also super bougie. Glass walls everywhere. Just top of the line everything. And we find out that the windows and the ceiling were blown out by sound gloves. Because Wells actually knows who attacked his home. It was Hartley, which was apparently a employee of Dr. Wells. Used to be real dick, but was also one of his favored people. Until he pointed out to Wells that there was a chance the particle accelerator would explode. Wells didn't like that and got him fired. Well, let him go, I guess. Because he owned the company, so you could just have him let go. Hartley, when he's doing some stuff, tells Flash that he knows Wells' secret, which is the particle accelerator thing. And Hartley, it turns out, he kind of wanted to get caught by the Flash. He got put in the particle accelerator little boxes that we've talked about. And he breaks out. Yeah, it's not great. They do get him back. But, back in there properly this time, but a lot of trouble the whole time. Iris gets a call, and she has been invited to start writing for the Central City Picture News. They want her to write stories about the Flash, and that's pretty much it. Which she's not, super happy about. She was hoping to, really push her reporter chops, but hey, at least you're in. That's the biggest point sometimes, is just getting in the place. Wells kind of decides that hopefully by telling his secret, he's taking away some of Hartley's power. So he goes and has a press conference where he tells everyone that he did actually know there was a chance of the particle accelerator exploding, and he went ahead with it anyway. And he only accepts a question from Iris, who's there because of the Central City Picture News. Photo news, maybe? And then he immediately is like, and that's enough questions for Deadeye, and wheels away. Really showing your favoritism and like making it seem like maybe Iris is only getting her stuff because she knows people. Good job, bud. Joe really decides to double down on that investigating Wells, and he's not going to tell Barry about it because Barry looks up to him too much. You know, he trusts him too much. He sees him every day. Let's just not for now. Remember I talked about a meta that could teleport wherever she could see? This is her episode. While they're trying to like figure out where she could be because she breaks out her boyfriend, and then they're trying to find out Barry and Caitlin, you know, they've decided they're both a little stuffy, you know, so focused on these other people that, you know, at least at the moment, there's no real hope for the relationship continuing. They've been avoiding having a social life. So they decide to case some of the bars that the Meta and her boyfriend usually frequent. One of them is a karaoke bar. Caitlin gets very drunk and gets her and Barry to go up on stage, and they sing a song, and we find out Barry can sing. Absolutely. Absolutely he can sing. And while he's at the bar with Caitlin, like at the actual like bit where you order your drinks, girl shows up and she's like, "Hi, you know, you're pretty good up there. Was that your girlfriend? No? Cool. Did you know they have this new app thing where you can like just kind of put your phone up to somebody else's and your contact information will just show up in their phone?" And it does, and her face pops up, and she's like, "You know, you can use that if you want. You know, completely up to you." Very, very sly, cool little way of being like, "Here's my phone number," and showing that she likes him and stuff. I thought it was very smooth. Almost makes me wish I was still a dating person. And then I think of the rest of the scene, and I'm like, no, never mind. I'm good. Hartley, who is, you know, back in the particle accelerators, is kind of helping Cisco try to figure out what happened with Ronnie because he claims he knows what happened. Cisco adjusts his ear thing that he has because he has like tinnitus and he has something, a cochlear device in his ear that helps him with it. He uses that and like adjust the frequency to give him a massive headache in order to get him to work with him a little bit more. Eventually tells him that Martin Stein and Ronnie were fused into one person because Martin Stein is working on this fusion for stuff, and he happened to, for some reason, have his work with him when the particle accelerator went off. Like, he was standing outside Star Labs with it in a bag that he like pulled out right as the dark matter hit him, and Ronnie's like spirit, you can see in the cameras his little face go right into Martin. Very strange. I'm not. So they have no reason to, you know, believe that he's not, right? So they, at least Cisco knows possibly what happened to Ronnie. Barry's dad at some point hears them talking about the teleporting Meta. Her boyfriend owes some money to someone pretty powerful, like a mob person, and Barry's dad is able to get some information about when their next like job is going to be. So he starts getting some info, being a little informant from the inside. He gets beaten up for it, and he gets sent to the prison hospital. So Barry and his dad are able to be like in the same room without like glass and stuff in front of him. So it leads to a sweet moment, but it is like, please never do this again, sir. I don't need you dying in prison when I'm so close to possibly finding the person that was like responsible for Mom's death. It's messed up. Barry actually takes the dude who beat him up and like takes him outside, and he's like, where's your boss, having their next thing and stuff. You better let me know before Iron Heights realizes that there's a prisoner missing and you're trying to escape. And this dude's like, I'm like 2 years away from parole. Please take me back inside. Okay, I'll tell you. Tells him the stuff. He's like, all right, let's go back inside. And he's like, gotta run. And he leaves. And this dude looks like he's escaping. It's messed up. I know, Barry, you're angry, but holy shit. Holy shit. Maybe don't do that. So Ronnie's starting to make a little bit of noise. Firestorm, he's starting to do things. And they decide, they really can't let him just roam around free anymore. He is now like a meta they have to deal with. So they start tracing Martin Stein's old friends and family. And they figure out that his wife, Martin Stein's wife, has had an encounter where a man got into her home and was like yelling at her and stuff right after Martin went missing. And they show her a picture, and it was Ronnie. And she also mentions that she always feels like she's being watched. So they kind of stake out her home, and they are eventually able to find Ronnie show up. They eventually, Ronnie comes and shows up, and they're able to capture him and bring him back. And they are eventually able to use Stein's wife. They find out where Ronnie's sleeping, which is like under an overpass. And they bring Caitlin and the wife, and they are both able to convince Ronnie Firestorm, which they find out Stein is in the driver's seat, even though it's Ronnie's face and body that they're using. They take him in, they give him some like antipsychotics to like calm the brain down, and are finally able to get him like more coherent. And Wells mentions that like most likely the fusions took the best options of both. Stein had better brain and Ronnie definitely had a better body because Stein's older and stuff. So that's, what was created. They also start noticing that his temperature is slowly rising. And there is a high chance that he's going to go nuclear if they don't do something. Stein, upon overhearing that, decides he's just going to go find a field somewhere and go ahead and just blow up because he doesn't want to hurt people. And Flash and Caitlin end up showing up. They have made a device, slap it on them, and they run off and they explode. And they go back to check because there's no fallout. The nuclear stuff, the readings are normal. And they find 2 bodies, Stein and Ronnie. They've been separated. Yay! During this, Barry and Caitlin are kind of busy doing that. Cisco and Joe are investigating Barry's old house to see if, with some new evidence, if they're able to find anything else that'll help them figure out who was there. Because, they were focused so much on the dad. He was right over the body. He had his fingerprints on the knife. There was no reason to look for anyone else. So they go back. They look around and they find out that Barry had a very old mirror in his house that's still there. The new owner ended up buying it in like the house sale or something. And it has silver nitrate on the back, which is what they used to use for pictures. And so with the flashes, they actually developed the nitrate, like 10 photos is what I think they said. So Cisco develops the mirror and is able to do some techno magic, and using the mirror and a projector is actually able to make a 3D model of what was happening and what like is in the picture. And they like go through it, and you can see Barry's mom yelling, and you can see 2 speedsters, which Cisco on the Christmas episode had actually been like, Barry mentioned that there was yellow and red, And when we watched those two fighting, Barry has yellow lightning and the dude has red lightning. So what if there's two speedsters? And they're able to confirm it. They see two blurs, like on separate sides of the room most of the time. And at one point they find there's blood that was put onto the other room. And luckily they pull back some wallpaper and they're able to find the blood samples. So they take them. And they have 2 blood samples. Literally, so convenient, so great. One of them is Barry's blood, which initially upon hearing that, you're like, oh, that's not so weird because he was like a little kid. He was actually there. This blood is from an adult Barry. So they realize one of those speedsters is Barry. He was there on the night of his mom's murder. So now that Firestorm has been separated, they both go home, obviously. Why wouldn't you? And the army shows up to try to take them. Of course, led by our favorite general, Eiling. He loves to make an appearance. During this, Joe also takes Barry back to his old home, which, hits Barry a little bit. And then seeing his mom in the 3D things, he points out the blood. He lets him know that he was there as an adult. Time travel. There's some time travel stuff. We're starting in big. And Flash has a lot to do with time travel. This is the main reason why this Arrowverse gets very complicated pretty quickly, is because of the Flash. He just can't seem to help himself. So, this season is a little easier, but I will do my best to keep everything in order when we're going through it. But Martin Stein is actually able to feel when Ronnie's in trouble. He can feel the panic building up inside of him, and they're able to get both of them back to the labs. And then Wells gives Stein up to the army. He was feeling like this was becoming a little too dangerous for Barry to be around, so he just gives him up to General Eiling. They're taken to a military base, a decommissioned one, supposedly, and Stein starts getting tortured by Eiling, but Ronnie can feel it. Ronnie cuts his arm where, and Stein uses the cuffs, to hit really cold on his wrist, to Morse code a code that he sees, a number that he sees on the wall, and that tells him, the military base number. So they are able to save him by re-emerging Firestorm. Stein and Ronnie reconnect, but this time they accept it, so they're not they don't turn crazy like they did the first time. They're able to work together, and actually Ronnie's kind of able to take a little bit more of a front seat position with Stein just being in his head directing him, which is a lot better. But they decide that they're gonna need to stay on the run, because now the army definitely knows about them and is wanting to do stuff about it. So they have to leave, and they have a goodbye to both their wives. And Caitlin, they aren't married yet, but still, both their wives, and they head off. Wells kidnaps General Eiling, takes him into the sewers, and takes off his little thing, and he reveals that he's the man in yellow. And he talks to him and stuff, and then he's like, an old friend wants to see you. He runs away. And you can hear Grodd come around, because apparently he's living in the sewers now. And Wells just leaves Eiling for Grodd. Whatever that's gonna... yeah. Again, all my homies hate Dr. Wells. He's a bitch. Barry is running to a crime scene. And while he's going, he sees another version of himself running right next to him. This is a little concerning, and it makes him stop at this particular intersection, and he looks at these things, and this becomes important. He sees the same, a sign twirler, a girl trying to grab a taxi and stuff. And then he keeps going, And they find, he runs the rest of the way to the crime scene where they are in the morgue where the coroner has been murdered through hail. And they find out there was a recording put in, like an automatic recording put in to the room so that the doctor can just like say his notes out loud and while he's doing an autopsy. And they hear Mark Martin, Clyde Martin's brother, the weather meta, seeking revenge for whoever killed Clyde, which it just so happens to be Joe. And they find out like Mark seems to have a more controlled version of the weather meta that he and his brother apparently share. And he had like slammed hail into the dude to kill him. When they were investigating Barry's house, Joe let Cisco know that he was, suspicious of Wells. And Cisco was originally like, no, that's bullshit. Of course, why would he do that? He's been helping Barry and stuff. But he starts to notice that Wells is a little fishy. He's been doing some weird stuff. Mark Martin attacks the police station, and the chief of police gets hit and is hurt so badly that the doctors are pretty sure he's lost the use of his legs. And he probably will not be able to return to the force. There's a dude named Mason that works at the Central City Picture News with Iris. And he is also been watching Wells. He also thinks he's a little weird. And he tells Iris that he has evidence of Wells being a sociopath. And he's got like a whole folder of evidence. Joe and Eddie decide to go look at old Martin brother hangouts, and they are actually able to find him. And they interact with him a little bit by them like checking out the room and Joe being pulled out and kidnapped by Martin. This is not good. Cisco turns on the force field machine because he's trying to figure out why it failed, because he ran the numbers 100 times. It's why this is happening. And he finds a recording of the reverse flash doing the turn to Wells. So, Dr. Wells, we finally meet speech. Wells kind of noticing something was up by, like, Caitlin was asking him to a coffee shop and, like, was like, no, we should eat him here. We should drink here. And really dragging her feet. And so Wells zooms over. And he shows up behind Cisco, standing, and introduces himself as Eobard Thawne. Thawne is an Eddie Thawne. And Cisco even asks that, and he goes, consider him a distant relative. He shows Cisco that he can go so fast that there's like two of them. He calls it a speed mirage. And that's how he was able to like beat himself up that night. Eobard tells his story about how he has gotten stuck and he needs the flash, and he makes his hand go and puts it right into Cisco's chest and crushes his heart and kills Cisco. Like, he fucking kills Cisco while saying, like, I've always thought of you as a son. Like, traumatizing. What? Excuse me? Cisco's dead. Anyway, Barry and Iris head down to the docks because Iris gets a phone call from Martin and is like, don't tell anybody, but come meet me at the docks if you want to save your dad or whatever. And they show up at the docks. And they both confess to each other that they have feelings for each other and they haven't been able to stop thinking about each other. And, you know, like, during the Christmas episode, Barry did, like, come to Iris and was like, I do have feelings for you. Eddie is right. And apparently they've been thinking about each other this whole time. And Mark Martin starts making a tsunami to come hit the city. And Barry's like, I didn't want you to find out this way. And he turns into the Flash, and then he runs off. And he's talking to Caitlin, and he's like, how do I stop this? And she's like, if you go fast enough, you might be able to keep, like, a wall. And he just starts running. And he goes so fast that he starts running down a street at night. And he sees a copy of himself. And he stops on a street corner, and he sees a sign twirler. and a woman trying to hail a taxi. It's the same from the beginning. We are back at the beginning of the episode. Barry has time traveled. We're on episode 15. Time travel already. On to 16. We're back on the same day that we just left. But it's, it's back. And he, freaks out a little bit, and he actually shows up to the crime scene as Barry instead of as the Flash to check it out first and then come back as Barry. So he's able to point out things before he's even, gotten near the body, which is weird. And he's, saying things at the same time as other people because he's what the fuck? Wells realizes this because he keeps repeating things, saying things as people are realizing. And Wells is like, can I talk to you? And he's like, hey, what, did you time travel? This shit really hit Barry as weird. This is the first thing he thinks of. And he goes, yeah, I did. I was a day in some change. And Wells is like, don't tell me anything else. Just do exactly as you did before. You don't want to mess up the timeline. But Barry, being the heroistic spirit that he has, he thinks of the chief of police that's going to get hurt. He thinks of Joe that's going to get hurt and all these things. And so he can't help himself but to intervene. He already knows where Martin's hiding. So he just shows up, catches him, pops him in the jail. And Wells is like, oh, my dude, do you have any idea what you could have done? You might bring something worse. You have literally no idea what could happen because you did this. Barry's like, it's gonna be fine. You remember how I said Barry got that number of the girl? They've been dating a little bit. He's been having some trouble balancing being the Flash and dating, considering he does most of his crime fighting at night. And they decide to break up, and Barry doesn't take it badly. He's fine, because remember, he knows now that Iris has feelings for him and has been thinking about him. So he's like, everything's fine. Because they catch Martin so quickly, Cisco has no excuse to not go see his brother at his brother's birthday party. And it's like a child's birthday party because his parents think of his brother Dante as being the best person that's ever lived, but also that he's still a concert pianist like he was in high school. He's not done that. I don't remember his job, but that's just not what he does anymore. He still lives at home. Apparently he sleeps in a lot, which pisses Cisco off for some reason. But he has a terrible time, especially because, his brother treats him like crap. Dante calls Cisco Mija, which is daughter. Come on, man. That's a shitty thing. Your insult is just that I'm a girl. But also, young girl is you're such a fucking dick during that scene. It was so bad. So Barry and Cisco go to a bar, and Barry's in a good mood, and he's like, oh yeah, Linda and I broke up, and he's like, are you okay? And he's like, yeah, I'm fine. He's like, cool, glad you're good. You want to hear about my shitty day? And then a girl comes up and starts hitting on them, and Barry's like, I'm sorry, man, I'm trying to hang out with my friend. She's like, I'm trying to talk to your friend, not you. And so Barry's like, I'm gonna step over here, call me if you need me. And Cisco and this girl start really, really kicking it off, and she takes him home with her. And this is really nice house, really, really nice. And he's like, oh gosh, this is great. She's like, oh, we're just squatting. And he's like, Snart rounds the goddamn corner. The girl takes her wig off. She's Snart's sister. And Mick rounds the corner with Dante. He's got the whole crew. And they force Cisco to remake the heat and cold gun and to make their sister, Snart's sister, something. And Cisco's also like, I'm sorry that I kissed your sister. And Snart is like, you kissed him? And she's like, do what I want, you know. I'm a grown-ass woman. So Barry, assuming everything was going well, because, you know, it went well the whole time, he goes home. He has no reason to worry about Cisco. And when he gets up the next morning, he decides he's going to talk to Iris about his feelings. She's like, yo, nothing's changed since Christmas. And, like, I'd really prefer you didn't keep trying to make me be the bad guy. Like, please stop doing this. And, yeah, Barry's, like, in shock. He doesn't know it. Like, what? But today, the yesterday that was today, you were like, you were cool with this. And now you're not? What the fuck? Captain Cold and Heatwave is what they end up naming Mick, by the way, and Cold's sister show up at a rival family's casino to cause havoc and settle an old debt. Eddie, upon, like, they show up at a crime scene, and Barry and Eddie are there. When Barry shows up, Eddie punches him in the face for bothering Iris. It's like, yeah, man, fucking stand up for your girl. I don't know if the punch probably, you know, got across, but, like, I don't know if he was needed. He could have just maybe confronted him. But hey, the golden retriever puppy of a dude, you know, finally, you know, stood up, was like, yo, this is fucked up, dude. Leave her alone. She's told you that she does not have feelings for you. You need to respect that. Back at the mansion that they're squatting in, Dante has decided, you know what? I'm done not fighting for stuff that I want in life. Because he's, you know, still living with his parents. He's not doing stuff. So he tries to escape and break out. It's not a good plan. They end up... Snart hits him with a first-degree cold burns on his fingers. If he doesn't get medical attention, those things are gone, and he won't be able to play the piano anymore, because he still does play the piano. He's just not a concert pianist. And he's like, I will let you guys go if you, Cisco, tell me who the Flash is. Tell me his name. And Cisco shows up in Star Labs very upset. He said he was going to kill my brother. I had to tell him. So Snart now knows who the Flash is. Only Snart, though. The other two weren't in the room. Heatwave and his sister were in a separate space at this point. So only Snart knows the Flash. Turns out, Captain Cold, Snart here, and his crew weren't actually hoping to get anything from the casino besides the fact now that they've attacked it, they're moving their money. So they're trying to hit the transport van. Barry ends up taking Snart into the forest nearby, and he's like, yo, you gotta fucking stop. Like, maybe if you at least, like, you don't really care too much about hurting people. He's mainly about the steal. If you stop hurting people, I'll leave you alone. You know, put away the guns, the cold and the heat guns and stuff, and let's put an end to that. And eventually, Snart does agree to stop hurting people, and that Barry will leave him alone, and Snart won't try to keep fighting Barry. They're just two separate entities at this point. Caitlin, trying to do some damage control for how weird Barry's been acting, tells Iris and Eddie that Barry is suffering from lightning psychosis, and that's why he's been acting so weird. And they're immediately like, oh my god, I'm so sorry. And Eddie's back to being like a little puppy, and he's like, oh my gosh, I don't know what even came over me. I'm so sorry, and you know, we're both here for you and stuff. And it's very, let's get back to the status quo now kind of moment. After hours, the Reverse Flash shows up at the Central City Photo News to kill the Mason dude who has a stack of stuff on Wells. Because Barry had found out about it, and I think he might have mentioned something to Wells. This dude shows up dead, and Cisco actually mentions something about it. Like, he's about to start talking about it before he notices it was either Cisco or Barry. I'm suddenly doubting who it was. Somebody was about to talk to Wells about it until they saw that the Mason was dead show up on the news, and then they're like, never mind. But I do have in my notes that Barry loses faith in Wells, so that's mainly why I think it might have been Barry, but I thought it was Cisco. Either way, Barry is very suspicious of Wells and seems to think maybe he's not exactly who I thought he was. So Barry and Joe team up to look into Wells killing Barry's mom, Nora. Cut to a playground, and there's a bunch of presents coming down on parachutes, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, look at this, it's so cool, till one hits the ground and fucking explodes. They're bombs. You know, parents grabbing their kids, they're running away. I think Barry's able to show up just in time to like save a kid from being exploded because he's trying to touch one because he's not paying attention to all the other ones exploding around him. And then a video shows up online about a dude who's named the Trickster, claiming credit and promising more. There is a little bit of back in time section during this where we see Flash and Reverse Flash fighting in Nora's house, and we see Flash running away from the scene of the death, and him lose his speed force, which is what we eventually start calling what the speedsters use in order to run. So he has it in little bursts, and he seems to be stuck. He's talking to Gideon. He's like, how do I get back? And they're like, you don't. Gideon, the same computer that's in Wells's thing. We do see the Reverse Flash's face back then, and it does not look like Wells. So there's like a tiny bit of confusion at first. You're like, what? Pretty sure Wells is him. Why? We'll get to it very, very soon. But back to the Trickster. Barry and Joe go to visit the old Trickster because he turns out he was going around like around 20 years ago doing little terroristic actions, you know, spicing up life. Playing tricks and stuff. And who do you get to play someone called the Trickster, who does terroristic things in a city? You get Mark Hamill. You get, gosh darn, the voice of the Joker, the one that, like, everyone, like, most people online agree for animated Jokers, this is your go-to. You get Mark Hamill to play him. And he has in a separate wing of Iron Heights because apparently he convinced a psychiatrist to commit suicide before, so now they just kind of put him in a corner, like, just stay over there. Very few people interact with him. They give Barry, like, candy to give him in order to get him to, like, talk a little bit more. And the Trickster claims that, like, this dude is bullshit. Fucking imitation, cheap stuff, and he's pissed. Back in time, we see the Reverse Flash, the different faced man, watching a beach, and he sees Dr. Wells, as we know him today, like with that face, and his wife Tess on a beach. We hear them talking about how they're gonna open up a lab, and it's gonna be this whole staple. They're gonna make it both visually interesting and the, what they're working on being interesting. And he wants to call it, where the acronym would be TESS. And Tess is like, no. We should call it this, and it'll be short for Star Labs, which is great. Back to our time. Iris has contacted the Flash asking for help finding Mason because he's just disappeared. And he's not one to disappear, especially not even to answer his emails, because even when he gets really deep on a story, if he has to, like, go find some stuff, he usually will at least answer his phone and his emails. The Mark Hamill Trickster sees a video of the new Trickster, and he's, like, pissed. He's like, get out of my mask. Take off my mask. And he's very upset. And then we find out that the Trickster is hidden a bomb. The new one has hidden a bomb somewhere in the city, in this space. And the Flash is trying to find it. And Wells is like, I don't think this is I don't think there's actually a bomb here. I think this is a distraction. And Barry, not really trusting Wells right now, doesn't listen. He keeps looking. And Cisco's like, why isn't he listening to you? That's weird. And he finds the crate with a bomb drawn on it, and he opens it up, and it says, "Tricked you!" And we find the bomb is in Iron Heights because the trickster has used it to break the old trickster out. And they took a hostage, which for some reason Barry's dad was down. I mentioned he was far away, but eventually down the hallway you get to Barry's dad, and he talked to him on his way to the first time meeting him. That's why, we know that's where his cell is. So they took him. We do find out that, the reason they took him is because they know his son works for the police. And so they're, trying to use that as leverage. The old trickster also reveals to the new trickster that there's a reason he was the one that was sought out and groomed. He uses the word groomed was because the new trickster is actually the old trickster's son. Their father and son. Literally, Mark Hamill gets to go, "I am your father." It definitely just happened to be the line, and for sure was not written because it's Mark Hamill fucking saying it. But he said, I picked you and I groomed you to fulfill my legacy and break me out because it's in your blood. Flashback, The Reverse Flash has set up a line of spikes on the road for Wells and Tess to run over. And they do. And the Reverse Flash helps Wells out of the thing while Tess is dying in the car. And he uses some kind of thing that he puts on both of them. And he sucks the life force out of Dr. Wells into the Reverse Flash. And the Reverse Flash's face morphs into Wells's face. So now we know why the Reverse Flash didn't look like Wells when he first showed up. Because that's, Wells is a person of the time. In space, he was normal, and then he suddenly is not normal anymore. He's now Reverse Flash. And he just kind of continued living Dr. Wells' life, and he makes the particle accelerator before the original date that it would have been set, because he's from the future. We find out for sure, he's from super in the future. I know we've had the date on the newspaper, but he's like, oh, I'm from even farther than that. And apparently the particle accelerator was originally supposed to go live in 2020. Yikes. Ooh, interesting. That's not a year that's, super important now. But he makes it go in 2015, which is when the show is airing. Kind of moves it along. But yeah, and that's... I was like, 2020. Yeah. Whew. You know what? I'm glad you moved it. That year was busy enough. We didn't have enough time. We couldn't pencil in particle accelerator explodes, Flash is created. There was too much happening that time. Back to regular time. The tricksters, there's two of them now, they're at a charity fundraising gala thingy for the mayor. And they are handing out champagne. And they tell them that there is a poison in it. And if you don't transfer a bunch of money to the account number on the bottom of your glass, we won't give you the antidote. Some people are already starting to send stuff over, but they're able to get there. And when Flash shows up, there is the tricksters put a bomb on his wrist, and they say if you go below 600 miles an hour, this will explode. They're like, you've seen Speed? It's like that. but faster. You better run. And so he starts going through, and Wells starts trying to talk through with Barry on how to move his particles at the same wavelength as a wall so that he can phase through it, and the wrist thing will come off. Which he is able to, like, Barry initially is like, but he is able to do it. Which brings me to this thing. So if that was on him when he did that and it came off now, why is his clothes and his, like, communicator and stuff all able to stay on and go through the thing? And it's like that with a lot of the metas. Like, the bomb girl, she could touch her own clothing and nothing would happen. The transporting girl, clothes came with her. When Ronnie was going on fire, his clothes were fine. There's one meta at one point that turns into a poisonous gas. Clothes went with him. Why? There's another meta that could turn into any person, and his clothes would change too. I just, like, what is the... Why? I understand, like, TV-wise, why, obviously, the clothes would go with, but, like, what the fuck? Does this mean, like... And you can't even say, oh, it's because it's the clothes they were wearing when it happened. Because for a lot of them, it wasn't. And Barry's specifically, that suit was not on him when it happened. What? Whatever. He's able to get the thing off. It explodes. He goes back. At this point, they've, because they could hear what drug it was, they'd made an antidote. And Barry goes through and everybody. And the trickster goes, that's not very sanitary. Between we finding out that the particle accelerator is supposed to go off in 2020, and then an antidote being put in everybody's arms, but with the same goddamn needle, and talking about sanitary. This episode was a little interesting in light of recent events in time. But they, round up the tricksters and get them put in jail. And the Flash, Barry, shows his face to Eddie to help convince Eddie to keep Iris in the dark. Because Joe... The main reason they're keeping Iris in the dark is purely because Joe doesn't want her to know. Because he doesn't want her to know. I guess at the end of the day, that's his prerogative. So now that both Eddie and Joe know, Barry as the Flash starts working a lot more directly with them. Like, literally picking up a flasher and depositing them in the back of the police car. And then they're in a chase, so he takes Joe, who's sitting in the passenger seat, out of the car and into the driver's side of the bad guy's car, and takes the driver and puts him in the fucking back of the police car. Literally all that. And then they head over to a jewelry store and they stop a robbery all on the same night. Their freaking arrest records skyrocket, and you can tell Joe's loving it. Absolutely loving it. And Eddie's feels a little... You can see in his face, he's like, this is a lot. Because, like, I don't know, it becomes almost... I think it's almost becomes a little too easy, and it can start to feel a little bit like... Are we still doing the right thing? I don't know. Felicity shows up. She's back. I love her. While the team is talking about a new bee or bug-based metahuman. It's a bee-based. And Felicity has Mr. Ray with her, which we will, meet a little bit more during the Arrow episodes. But he is the Atom, Atom. He's another billionaire, and they are dating. Felicity really, up in her game. And Ray needs help with his Atom suit. He's got, like, Iron Man-esque full suit that he has. Cisco is getting flashes from that day that he died that never happened, technically, in this timeline. Which isn't great. He's, not feeling good about that. He's getting flashes of being killed. He hears, Wells being threatening towards him and stuff. It's not good. While Barry is trying to help with bees, he's like, don't even worry about it. I can run faster than a bee. Don't even sweat. So while he's trying to save somebody, this bitch gets surrounded and bitten by some bees. There's stung or whatever, beaten. He gets hit by some bees. And they find out, the venom in these are way too strong. There's no reason it should be like that. And they have to use a defibrillator in the suit, and it fries it. One use, apparently, is this defibrillator. Iris and Eddie are in a bit of a fight because Iris can feel Eddie kind of backing away from her because he has a secret and he wants to tell her, but he can't. And she's like, you need to keep being honest with me. You can't just stop doing this. So we find out one of the bees got in to Barry's suit, so when they bring him back and stuff, it gets out. They're able to stop it, and they're like, this is a weird looking bee. They put it under a microscope. It's a goddamn robot. They got robot bees up in here. And there's a girl named Bree Larvin who apparently was working on some robot bees for Mercury Labs, that same lab that had the tachyon particles. And as soon as they found out that she was going to use them for possible war things, they fired her. And she's getting revenge on the two people that ratted her out and the Mercury Labs head. There's a moment where Felicity, in her beautiful awkwardness, describes Ray as Barry in Oliver's body. And she's like, don't repeat that to anyone. And girl. They're able to catch Bree mainly with the help of Felicity counter-hacking, hacking into the bees, and then the girl, Bree, starts fighting against her and eventually able to counter-hack enough to get the bees off Barry so he could actually handcuff the girl to the chair that she's in and get the police in there to actually arrest her. And he's able to save the Mercury Labs lady. She goes in to thank him, and she mentions that after the car accident, it was like Wells was a completely different person. Barry and Joe have been kind of going back and forth on whether to include Cisco and Caitlin in their suspicion of Wells because, they work for him. They don't know how deep their loyalties lie with him. And they decide to bring him in on their suspicion. And while talking about it, Cisco is like, I've been having these dreams where Wells kills me. So, he's like, I'll listen to the evidence at the very least. The rift between Iris and Eddie is just getting worse. Iris is not a fan. Not a fan. And Eddie's like, Barry, I don't know how long I can lie about this to her. We're going to need to do something at some point. Oh, this is where the metahuman that can change into people show up. He has to touch him, though. Cisco and Joe head to Starling City to look into the car accident that Wells got into. And while there, the Black Canary, Laurel Lance, asks Cisco if he can help her modify the sonic device that her sister left her. She's like, I would like some updates. It'd be great. And Caitlin is not sure about Wells being the Reverse Flash. She's given some real doubts. She's like, he's in a wheelchair. He's helped you get your speed up. Why would he do that if he killed your mother and he was the Reverse Flash? There's no reason. While fighting the shapeshifter, at some point it must have touched Eddie, and the shapeshifter shoots at two cops. We don't actually know if they die. They just say they're fighting for their lives. shoots 2 cops while looking like Eddie on camera, and shoots the camera. Eddie's in deep shit. Cisco and Joe find Dr. Wells's body. Turns out the Reverse Flash just kind of dragged him off to the side, dug a big hole, and just stuck that raisin husk of a body just in the ground. And they're able to kind of find him because they have a tachyon detector device, and also Lance comes with them. Laurel's dad, and he has a coffee, and the coffee starts going up because that's what happens whenever tachyons and like time travel stuff is happening. And they dig up and they find the body, and they're like, don't tell anybody about this, Lance. I know, you're a fellow cop, you want to, but like keep on down low. And they like come back and they're like, well, thank you so much for showing us around and stuff. And the Black Canary shows up and she's like, hey, you got my sonic device? He's like, yes, I do. Do you have the thing that I needed from you? She's like, I do. And if you show anybody this, I will kill you. He's like, that's just a saying, right? And she's like, no, it isn't. He pulls out the sonic device, which is now a collar, which is very, very cool. And she pulls out a little manila like folder, the kind of you flip over and you put the little silver thing through. He opens it up and it's a picture of him and the Black Canary, and she's like, and he's like, he just looks like a kid at Comic-Con. It's beautiful. And he's like, yeah, got it. I'm pretty sure was it just a picture or was it signed? I think it was just a picture. Eddie decides he really cannot keep lying to Iris. So he tells Iris that he's been working with the Flash. He does not tell her who the Flash is. He's just like, I've been working with the Flash, and that's why I've been so distant. Which I'm glad he was able to kind of find a middle ground and be able to save his relationship without betraying Barry. So after everybody gets back in town, Cisco, Barry, and Caitlin are like studying the layout of the Star Labs. Apparently, Cisco made a 3D model of it to try to figure out why the particle accelerator went bad, but he'd only really looked at the particle accelerator. Start looking at the rest of it, and they find a space that shouldn't be there. Like, there's no room or anything, but there is. And so they go and check it out, and they're able to find Wells' secret room with his suit storage open. And that future newspaper with the Flash disappears in crisis, April 20th, 2024, up. Just there. And they start talking, and Gideon starts talking back. Like, hey, what's up? You guys need any help? And they realize the byline of the newspaper says Iris West Allen. West-Allen. They're like, oh shit. Barry and Iris get married. And that Barry becomes the chief of police, because Gideon, says who he is, and also that he created Gideon. And that's why she's listening to him, and he even goes like, can you not tell Wells that we were in here? And she's like, oh, absolutely, I'd do anything you say. And he's like, bitch, what? And she's like, well, you created me. Why does Wells have Gideon? I don't think I ever find out why Wells had Gideon in the parts of The Flash I've watched, because I haven't watched the whole thing, and I'm doing this rewatch for this. So, we'll find out maybe eventually. I don't know. But yeah, that was weird. And then, Wells comes in, he's like, how's everything, Gideon? She's like, everything's perfectly fine. Barry finally tells the crew about the time travel that he did. This also might have been when Cisco starts being like, yo, okay, so this is my dream. And they decide to make lucid dream glasses so they can help Cisco guide through the dream and figure out what actually happens, and hopefully maybe get some evidence they can use against Wells. They are able to find it. They go through and they're like, what if we can get this scene to reenact? We'll fix the force field so you can safely get into it without, and the Wells won't be able to come in. But yeah, basically let's just reenact this scene. So they do that. They have Caitlin up top recording. Barry and Joe are in the back of the room hiding behind some stuff, and they are like, yo, let's just do it. And Wells does go down there and is like, repeats part of his thing, but not all of it. And Cisco steps in and he closes it. And he hasn't fully said that he's killed Nora yet. But he walks through the force field and is like, pfft. Everyone's freaking out. So Joe ends up shooting Wells, and Barry tries to get rid of all the bullets, and one makes it through and he kills him. He's like, he didn't confess. Turns out Wells was a couple steps ahead, and that shape changer meta, Wells had made a deal with him, and he just needed to do this thing, and he could have his freedom. Same thing he's done 2 other metas, but this time it fucking worked for him. Makes me mad. And he calls in and he's like, so you finally know and stuff, like, and you're gonna fucking, we'll fight eventually, don't you worry, Barry. Barry runs into the secret room because Cisco put a tracker on Wells's wheelchair. And that's where he saw the wheelchair was in the secret room. So he went in there, and on the wall was a bunch of camera feeds, because Wells has had cameras in their homes, in their jobs, in jitters. There's just cameras everywhere, and he's been watching them the whole fucking time. He kidnaps Eddie as insurance. And Iris, finally putting some detective works together, is able to figure out that Barry is the Flash. I'm pretty sure it has something to do with, like, when they kidnap Eddie and the way that he stops and, like, talks. There was she touched his hand, and the only other time, and some, like, blue static came off, and the only other time that's happened was while Barry was in his coma. So she's like, Barry? What the fuck? So we start the next, with, like, Barry being like, I've checked everywhere for Eddie. And Iris just walks into Star Labs, sees Barry, she's just like, yeah, have you? And confronts him. She's like, yeah, I fucking figured it out, bitch. Why the fuck didn't you tell me shit? She is pissed that not only was she kept in the dark, Eddie's still fucking gone. It's been 24 hours. Bitch hasn't been found yet. Like, what the fuck? They find General Eiling. I didn't write what he was doing, which I do feel bad about. But he's, like, basically, he's been stealing some stuff. And they find him, and he's, like, basically comatose. And they put him in the same place they put all the metas. And they finally kind of get him talking a little bit, and they find out he's being controlled by Grodd. They take some brain scans, and they compare it to, like, the last brain scans of Grodd, and they're the same. They finally tell him that, like, Grodd was there for the thing, and Eiling treated him like shit, so we kicked him, and he got out during the particle accelerator thing. We just haven't ever found him. They head to the sewers to look for Grodd. And they really leaned into Cisco's movie references in this episode. Like, they've, like, mentioned, like, he occasionally, like, references movies, which is fine. But they, like, did, like, 4 or 5 of them in this episode, when normally there's, like, 1 or 2. I don't know. It was enough that it was kind of out of place for me. They do confront Grodd, and they are able to get him to, like, leave Eiling alone and not kill any of them. And they're like, you know what? You can just stay here in the sewers. It's fine. Just, like, leave us alone. And you could see, like, the writing on the wall slowly get more and more, like, big-brained. And you could tell he's been getting smarter this whole time. We also finally figure out that Wells is keeping Eddie inside the particle accelerator while he's been rebuilding part of it. So they've been looking everywhere for Eddie, and he's right fucking there. He's right there this whole time. And while Wells has Eddie, he tells him that, you're not even, you're like the fucking worst person in our bloodline. Like, you're not a hero. You don't do anything important. You don't even get the girl. Barry marries Iris, so fuck you, fam. They finally find Eddie on like accident. Like, Wells comes out of the particle accelerator and they're like, whoa, what the fuck? And then they are quiet for a second and they hear, help, help. They finally find Eddie. And while trying, getting him, Iris finds the ring box that Eddie was going to propose with. Eddie describes that Wells was like building this tube, like a futuristic tube. And Cisco's able to find it because it's still in the accelerator. And they're like, can you take it down? He's like, I don't know what the fuck. This is future tech. Are you kidding me? No, I don't know. Like, I'm afraid if I touch this, it'll blow up. But they're pretty sure it's charging the particle accelerator. And they estimate it's going to take 36 hours to charge. So they have 36 hours to figure out what to do. And also, those metahumans that are in the pods? Yeah. If that thing gets turned on, the accelerator gets turned on, they're going to die. So we got to get them out of there because they don't want them to die. So they start trying to figure out how the hell they can get them out. And Barry suggests Leon Yu because Oliver has his little prison there. But they need a clear way to get these guys transported to an airfield. And Barry, contacts Argus and is able, specifically Lila, Deagle's wife, about getting a plane to help take them to Lianyu. And they get it. They secure a plane. They now just need to get the metas to the airfield. So Barry goes to Snart because they tried going to the police. They were like, yo, this is fucking kidnapping and human trafficking. Like, what the fuck? And they're like, it's just hypotheticals. Don't even worry about it. They call Oliver. Oliver's in Nanda Parbat. He's busy. They call in everyone they know, and it's just not happening. So he goes to Snart. He's like, yo, can you come with us? Like, Cisco's working on a containment thing. Can you come with us in case they break out? Like, we need some help containing them fully. Snart's like, yeah, I'll do that. If you erased every record of me that exists in the police databases, the FBI databases, and the internet, get it out of here. And Barry agrees because he doesn't really have much to stand on. Snart and his sister show up to, start helping. Pretty sure they leave Mick out of this. It's just Snart and his sister. And Snart's sister has actually caught actual feelings for Cisco this time. Like, not just fake, honeypotting him to follow her to a thing. Like, she's actually like, intelligence is cute, Cisco. And Cisco has to test his resolve. I will hold true because she is bad. Barry's in his suit and Caitlin's like, why are you in your suit? Like, Snart knows who you are. And Snart, apparently, he agreed he wouldn't tell anyone, including his sister. So she still doesn't know that Barry... But, she knows Caitlin and Cisco. It really wouldn't take that long to figure out who the Flash is. Once you know one of the team, it really won't take that long to figure out the rest. It turns out Cisco knows somebody who runs food cross-country, so he changes up a food semi to help contain the metas. He kind of puts up a thing that reduces their power, so they basically can't use it at all. And because they couldn't even get an escort from the police, Barry just runs ahead and puts construction barriers on the streets. And Snart and Joe are running along with motorcycles to guide them. And Snart's sister apparently has a Class C license and can drive the semi. So her and Cisco are in the cab. They get him along there. And once they get to the airfield, the containment thing kind of stops working. And all the metas get their powers back. And they break out of it. And almost all of them start fighting the Flash. The transportation girl, she runs away. And Martin creates a storm that makes the Argus plane crash. But yeah, most of them end up fighting. But Cold and his sister stop the fighting. And are like, yo, we tampered with the back so you guys could be free. You all now owe me. And you better be joining my rogues gallery that I've decided I'm going to do. And it's sneaky little bastard Snart. He killed one of the metas too because it turns out he owed him money. So Barry agrees with Joe that like he's not going to take any more steps on the dark side, working with Snart and honestly partially keeping these goddamn metas. Because Joe's not even fully been on board with keeping the metas in there. It's not a sanctioned prison. It's literally, it's illegal to do these things. And so Eddie has been super distant from Iris this whole time after he's been saved because, you know, he saw that thing. That he saw the newspaper even. He saw the Iris West-Allen byline. He knows that she is like destined to be with Barry. So he ends up breaking up with her. Wells shows up at Star Labs and to do the particle accelerator thing. And Flash goes out to meet him. But so does Firestorm and the Arrow. The whole team is there. And they all fight him. And they're able to knock him out. To get him figured out. Oh, I should mention at some point during this, they find a thing in the bottom of the wheelchair. Turns out Wells was using that to like charge himself because his powers come and go. So that's why he was pretending to use a wheelchair because he's basically just charging up all day, constantly. It's like smart. It was a pretty good idea. So Wells is like, yo, Barry, you could go back in time and save your mom. All you have to do is go into that particle accelerator there. We're going to only release one hydrogen particle instead of two, like you normally would for a particle accelerator. Because normally you want them to, things happen. Instead, you're going to be that other thing, you go, and then things are going to happen. And it's going to be great. And Martin, part of Firestorm, points out, you have literally no idea how much of history this is going to change. Like, they end up mentioning that he, you know, did one day. And they're like, can you imagine 15 years? Because at this point, it's been about a year since the particle accelerator went off. It's like 15 years of changes. You have literally no idea what this place is going to come back to. Joe thinks he should do it. He thinks, you know, at the end of the day, his family should be brought back together. That's kind of what they've all been leaning towards. Barry's dad says you shouldn't do this. You know, you just ruining your life and stuff. Like, that's not, your mom wouldn't want you to do this. But Barry talks to Iris and he decides he wants to do it. Something she says kind of convinces him that, she also mentions, I think, because at this point, you know, she's broken up with Eddie. She knows that she's supposedly, like, destined to be with Barry. That maybe if they hadn't grown up in the same house and, you know, her thinking of him as a brother, maybe something could have happened sooner. And he even admits that, like, being that close to her was almost a little too close. Like, it was kind of hard to actually admit his feelings. So, he decides to do it. The hydrogen particle and Barry running into it should create a wormhole. But if he doesn't go fast enough, he will die. And Cisco's not a fan. Because Cisco tells Wells, you know, I remember you murdering me in that alternate timeline. And Wells is like, Cisco, you had to have been affected by the accelerator. You can see through the vibrations of the universe. And Cisco is destined for great things. And he looks seriously choked up that, like, Cisco has to remember that. He doesn't feel bad for killing Cisco. He's like, I must have had my reasons. Like, I don't just do that kind of shit for shits and giggles, at least not here. So I must have had my reasons, but I'm sorry that you had to remember that. They discovered there is a chance that wormhole could become a black hole and destroy the world. Because that's how black holes work. Once one thing goes in, it gets bigger and it pulls more things in and it just eats up the whole goddamn space. That's why there's like no planets anywhere near a black hole in space. So there's that whole thing. And they figure out that if Barry can get there, save Nora, and be back in like a minute 47, almost 2 minutes, they'll be able to close the wormhole in time that it won't become a black hole. Wells is able to help figure that out. But like, he's like, 2 minutes is plenty of time. Let's go save your mom. Don't even worry about it. Don't even worry about it. Caitlin and Ronnie decide, you know what, before we do this big thing that's gonna like potentially kill everyone, let's get married. You know, we agreed at one point we wanted to get married. It turns out Martin is a rabbi. Like his dad wouldn't let him join MIT until he became a rabbi. So he officially marries Caitlin and Ronnie. Like, oh, that's so cute. Eddie decides, you know what, fucking screw the future. You know what? Because Martin points out that like he's the one guy in this whole situation that was like, doesn't seem to really be destined for this. Like, he's a coincidence. Like, how is it that one of your descendants ends up in the exact same town as you, same time? Like, coincidences are amazing. You know, it was a coincidence that we met. He got stood up at a date and he happened to be walking back kind of sad, and that's when he saw somebody running by with a backpack and arrested him. And that was Iris's backpack. That's how they met. He's like, you know what? Fuck what the newspaper said. I want to be with you no matter what. So they start, like, you know, dating again. So Barry does it. He goes back in time to the night his mother died. He's waiting in the hallway for that moment. They tell him you have to wait for your old self to take your young self out, and then you can go in and stop the murder and stuff. So he's waiting in the hallway. He's looking. And the Flash that he's waiting to leave stops, looks at him and goes, no. And then goes to save young Barry. He just kind of stops. And he hears his mom get killed, and he hears Reverse Flash leave. And he comes in and he's able to say goodbye to his mother. He like reveals that who he is and stuff, and he just talks to her and cries over her while she bleeds out. While she's like, oh, my good boy. And he's like, he reassures her that he's gonna be fine, and he's just able to kind of calm her into death. This is such an emotional scene. He's literally holding her as she dies. Oh, and she just kind of ends, goodbye, 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 like whispering that as she goes. Oh. It's a sad scene. It's rough, and he's crying. And he comes back, and they've been setting Wells up in a time machine pod thingy because he doesn't actually have a speed force, so he can't run through like Barry did. And then he's gonna use that same wormhole to jump to his time. They got him all set up. He's about to leave, and Barry comes back through and he punches through the pod, punches Wells directly in the face, and he's like, you didn't do it. And he's like, no, I've got everything I need right here. And they shut down the wormhole before it can turn into a black hole. And then Eddie sees that Eobard Thane, Wells, Reverse Flash, the Man in Yellow, whatever you want to call him at this point, is fucking beating the shit out of Barry because he's pissed. And he's like, you know what? You're my direct descendant. You can't be here if I never have any kids. So he takes his gun, he turns it, and he shoots himself in the goddamn heart. Iris runs down because she was up in the control room and stuff, and she's crying over him, and he's like, he was wrong. I am the hero. And she was like, you're my hero. And he's like, that's all I've ever wanted was just to be your hero, Iris. And I'm like, we just watched Barry hold his mother while she died. And now Iris is holding Eddie while she did. And then for some reason, wormhole opens back up and starts turning into a black hole, and they all need to get out of there. And Iris is like, I can't leave him. They're like pulling her, and then his body gets pulled into the black hole with the rest of like time machine scrap and stuff. Because Eobard fucking disappeared because I guess he like never really existed anymore. But like also all this is happening because of him. Time bullshit. And the thing kind of destroys the labs, and it's up above. It's a big wormhole in the sky, black hole in the sky, and Barry decides, I can save the same way I did the tornado. Just go in the opposite direction. I disrupt the flow, and I can do it. And we end the show with him running up the thing, and you can see the speed force in his eyes, and that's how we end it. Y'all, this show is so crazy already. It's only season freaking 1. But that's The Flash. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you've been enjoying this series. We'll be back with Arrow next week, then a crossover episode, and then Constantine, which I'm very much looking forward to. That's basically for our next 2 months. Be sure to check out the blog post that is associated with this episode. It should be linked down below. If not, you can go to kyskornerproductions.com/blog, and it will be the most recent episode. It'll be named the same thing as this YouTube video. I hope you guys enjoy, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!
Hey guys, I really hope you enjoyed. Thanks so much for watching.
You can check out our website for all the content we produce.
Clicking all those YouTube buttons makes it so you see more content from myself and the other amazing creators at Kai's Corner Productions. All donations help us produce more stuff like that for you.
See you guys in the next one. Peace.